According to the deadly plants information, in order to perform our experiment, we will need fertilizer and food. Caterpillars should do nicely. This substance is an alkaloid, the same as in the bottle we found in the bushes at Kew Gardens.
Perfect, Watson. We can begin our experiment. I imagine that one of these plants would be capable of releasing a toxic vapor. I need to find out exactly how it could be done. I shall begin now. Watson, if you are at all optimistic to have dinner this evening, then I'd recommend that you put on the gas mask. No reaction. It appears to have fallen inactive after being disturbed.
My word! It shot a spike at me after I stabbed it with a pin. I imagined that its reaction would be ferocious if I increased the strength of my attack.
It appears to open after being soaked with alkaloid. This plant becomes inactive after being drenched with alkaloid. This plant becomes inactive after being drenched with alkaloid. It closed again. I believe I saw a small cloud of gas. I wonder what secrets this plant is hiding. Perhaps if we agitate it to a greater extent whilst it is opened, it will reveal a little more.
I find the behavior of predators utterly fascinating.
How interesting. What a strong and effective defensive mechanism. I am interested in what might occur if the prickly plant should shoot at it. It appears to open after being soaked with alkaloid. Toxic gas with spores. Extraordinary.
The plants would be capable of killing only if they were directly next to the victim and stimulated at precisely the right moment.
Let us take our caterpillars to the Colonial Collection Room. We may see things more clearly there.
It is too early, Watson. Our suspects will be there. Let us investigate Kew Gardens one more time and ask some questions. What is your opinion of Albert as a student of botany?
He's useless. I often tell him so, and I can only give him cleaning tasks. Botany is not his life's work, and his father well knew it. He was furious about it.
He was?
Oh yes. He forced his son to work here, and he never missed an opportunity to criticize him publicly.
Are you able to elaborate on that?
Well, for example, with our last exhibition here, Mr. Dunn had Albert make a presentation speech. But then, while the lad was speaking, Mr. Dunn interrupted him, asking him difficult questions, making him look like a failure. It was with the intention of making a fool of him, Mr. Holmes.
That must have been terribly humiliating.
Yes, he was crushed, and he had to leave. Everybody was making fun of poor Albert. That is, except for Miss Margaret White, who was such a nice lady and who always takes pity on Albert.
You mentioned a Miss White. Would you tell us more about her?
She is a student who works here part-time. She is quite charming indeed. She possesses a great talent for botany. You should take a look at some of her experiments that she carried out in the laboratory. Ah, if only she were not so naive.
Why naive?
The way she used to flutter around Mr. Montague Dunn. And he couldn't help but be flattered by all her attention. How could an intelligent woman such as Miss White not see through his game? I can only scratch my head and wonder.
Mr. Hamish, was someone from your family connected with Kew Gardens?
Family? No. I'm the only one with a passion for botany.
I do not think so. This photograph of you and your father at Kew Gardens suggests the opposite.
But you have no right to...
Do tell us more about your father.
He was, indeed, the greatest botanist of his time in the British Empire. He worked together with Montague Dunn until the end of his life. He brought me in at the age of 12.
Did he get on well with Mr. Dunn?
No, I couldn't say that. They expanded Kew Gardens together, that was all. And it was all my father's work, for Dunn always lived the high life.
So Mr. Dunn was not helping your father?
Oh, yes, he provided the financial support. And as far as he was concerned, that fulfilled his role. But the worst of it was, he declared himself as the master of Kew Gardens. Fame meant nothing to my father, so it was easy for Mr. Dunn to take all the credit.
Can you tell me if you saw Mr. Montague Dunn on the day of his death?
Yes, of course. I met him, and we went to see Albert, his son, at around 9:30. He appeared quite calm.
What were you doing on the morning of the accident?
After paying multiple visits to Albert, I had a little talk with Miss White. Then I returned to my desk to complete some paperwork. Suddenly I observed that Mr. Dunn was not feeling well, so I ran immediately to fetch Albert. I clearly remember that it was around 10:30, for I was late that morning.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. We shall continue our investigation. Your father's death does seem highly suspicious. What were your movements here on that day?
Suspicious? Well, I was working in the seed house, taking care of Lysa, something, or Lear Pontus, or... No, wait. Ah, these Latin names. And I spent so many hours trying to memorize them.
Did you see your father that day?
Yes. He came here with Mr. Hamish for his weekly visit. There was nothing unusual about that.
And then?
Nothing. They stepped out to the backyard. It was perhaps 20 minutes before 10 o'clock. Then about 10 minutes later, I saw my father heading for the dry tropics room while Mr. Hamish returned here.
And Mr. Hamish and Miss White, what were they both doing that morning?
Mr. Hamish visited me a couple of times. I also saw him returning from talking with Miss White, and that was at 10 minutes past 10. But then he ran back here to me to tell me that my father was feeling unwell. We hurried across to the water lily room, and I found my father lying dead on the floor. Oh, my God.
I perceive that you are passionate about the Royal Navy.
Passionate? No, not really. I like ships, that is all.
Are you quite sure? You do not seem to be so interested in plants.
It's difficult, that's all. My future is here. It has never been about anything else.
And yet I know that the Royal Naval College rejected your application.
Ah, you truly are as clever as they say. Yes, that's correct. And in fact, my father was strongly against the idea. He did his best to ruin my plans, although I almost did succeed. But my dreams were shattered, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, young man. We shall see you again soon. This poster is for an exhibition that Martin Hamish was directing, but it had nothing to do with Kew Gardens. This certificate belongs to Martin Hamish. He won a horticultural competition. A thesis written by Martin Hamish. A glasses case. It is empty. This area serves as Martin Hamish's office. We can see the interior of the Colonial Collection Room from this window. A master's degree diploma. It belongs to Martin Hamish. An award presented to Martin Hamish for Best Grower of the Year. These young plants must be delicate if they are kept in the nursery. It is a bust of Montague Dunn. I am curious if the marble that we found will fit this place. Here it is.
The marble fragment that we found in the Colonial Collection Room is what they have in common.
The seeds of plant species are stored here. Locked. Seed house. Open.
A book about ships. Nothing at all to do with plants.
Materials for college study. They belong to Albert. These leather gloves are new and of good quality. They do not appear to have been used. This place serves as Albert's office. From here, we are unable to see the interior of the Colonial Collection Room.
Good day to you, miss. You have some very beautiful plants here.
Why, thank you, sir. And good day to you too. But...
Oh, I do beg your pardon. My name is Dr. John Watson. This is my good friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
I am honored to make your acquaintance, gentlemen. My name is Margaret White. Excuse me, but are you Sherlock Holmes, the great detective?
Yes, I am he.
What a pleasure to see you here at Kew Gardens. Are you working on a case?
Yes, a theft of plants that took place here a few days ago after their most recent exhibition.
Oh yes, of course. I quite forgot about that.
Oh, it's quite understandable that you might forget about the theft of the plants, miss, after the tragedy that took place here.
Yes. The director was a truly good man. It is such a terrible misfortune.
Would you happen to know why part of the Colonial Collection was cleared?
No, I have never been there.
Do you work here?
Part-time only. I am a biology student at the London University. I attend the same classes as the son of Mr. Montague Dunn. That is how I found my chance to work here for part of my thesis, you see. It is a great honor.
How well did you know Mr. Montague Dunn?
He was a master, a great leader. I saw him almost as a spiritual father.
He had an exceptional nature?
Oh yes, indeed. He was always so active and so optimistic and very nice to me. Although he could behave harshly towards his son.
Why so?
He loved his son dearly and wanted the very best for him. It made him extremely demanding. Albert, who is naturally shy, suffered because of it.
Most of the doors in Kew Gardens are locked. Do you have a key to this room?
Oh, yes. Albert gave me a set of duplicate keys. He agreed I might carry out my studies without disturbing him. It is only temporary.
The Divine Syndicate. Does that name mean anything to you, by any chance?
Not at all. But it is a very pretty name.
Can you tell me what Mr. Dunn was doing upon the day of his death?
I can. But there is nothing very special to say. I was in the laboratory when I saw Mr. Dunn heading towards me. Tuesday is the day of his weekly visit. It was supposed to be at 9, but he was 10 minutes late, as usual.
And then?
Well, he came in to say good morning. Then I saw him spend 2 or 3 minutes by the plants outside the laboratory. After that, he ran out in the direction of the nursery, where Mr. Hamish was working. He was always in a rush during the inspection, you see. I would pity anyone who stood in his way.
And that was the last time you saw him?
Yes. I stayed in the laboratory until 20 minutes to 11, when I heard the cries of Albert and Mr. Hamish from the large glass house.
I joined them as soon as I could, for I knew that something must be very wrong.
What exactly were you doing in the laboratory?
I was recording an experiment for my thesis. I only stopped my work once when Mr. Hamish visited me briefly around 10 o'clock.
You say you were recording an experiment when the tragedy occurred. Might I listen to the roll?
Certainly. Please do. You will find it in the laboratory. It is number 320.
Thank you, miss. None of the 3 people who work at Kew Gardens know why half of the colonial collection was cleared. So, someone is lying. It is obvious.
Everyone has gone, Holmes. The way is clear.